Hi, boys and girls. Well, many of us have relatives, and this story is called The Relatives Came. Like, a relative is someone who is related to your family. Like, for example, my mom has a sister. That makes her my aunt. My mom also has a brother. That makes him my uncle. Mr. Clapp, he just has a sister, so that gives Sebastian an aunt. And I used to have 4 grandparents, but now I just have 1 grandparent. That's my mom's mom. So let's find out about relatives. The Relatives Came. Story by Cynthia Ryland. That means she wrote the words. And illustrated by Stephen Gamble. That means he drew the pictures. And we're on the front, we've got the relatives arriving in their car. And on the back, we've got some relatives hanging out together. Oh, we have a front cover still. And we have a spine that helps us stay up nice and straight. And our back cover is where that picture was. So let's go in there. Blank so far. Oh, but then we have a title page. And I see a suitcase, a stuffed teddy bear, and some shoes. So they must be traveling for maybe a vacation? Who knows? Dedication page. I see lots of suitcases. So there must be lots of relatives coming. It was in the summer of the year when the relatives came. They came up from Virginia. They left when the grapes were nearly purple enough to pick, but not quite. So the grapes just aren't really quite ready for picking. Whoa, and they're trying to fit all those suitcases into that little car. They had an old station wagon that smelled like a real car, and in it they put an ice chest full of soda pop, and some boxes of crackers, and some bologna sandwiches. And up they came from Virginia. They left at 4 in the morning when it was still dark, before even the birds were awake. Wow, have you ever left on a great big trip where you had to get up super duper early and get in the car where maybe you were still even in your PJs? They drove all day long and into the night. And while they traveled along, they looked at the strange houses and different mountains, and they thought about their almost purple grapes back at home. They thought about Virginia, but they thought about us too, us waiting for them. Wow, I don't know if I'd want to live in this house. It's really, really on the edge of the mountain. I'd be afraid I'd fall down. So they drank up all their pop, and they ate up all their crackers, and they traveled all those miles until finally they pulled into our yard. Hi, we're glad you came. Then it was hugging time. Talk about hugging. Those relatives just passed us all around their car, pulling us against their wrinkled Virginia clothes, crying sometimes. They hugged us for hours. They're just so happy to see their relatives. Cool. It's been so long since they've seen each other. Then it was time. Into the house. And so much laughing and shining faces and hugging in the doorways. You'd have to go through at least 4 different hugs to get from the kitchen to the front room. Those relatives. They obviously haven't seen each other for a long time, so they're very happy to see each other, so there's lots of hugging. Have you ever had a time when lots of relatives came? Or maybe you were the relative that traveled and went to the other person's house, and so then you were the one doing all the hugging and so happy to see everybody. And finally, after a big supper, 2 or 3 times around until we got a turn at the table, there was quiet talk, and we were in twos and threes throughout the house. Now everybody's getting a turn to talk to each other and catch up on all the stories of all the times while they've been separated. The relatives weren't particular about beds, which was good since there weren't any extras. So a few squeezed in with us and the rest slept on the floor, some with their arms thrown over the closest person, or some with an arm across one person and a leg across another. It was different going to sleep with all that new breathing in the house. I wonder if anybody was a snoring kind of person. They're really sharing, which is nice. There's a lot of relatives there. The relatives stayed for weeks and weeks. It seems like a little bit much. They helped us tend the garden, and then they fixed any broken things they could find. Wow, that was caring and nice. There'd be a lot of acts of kindness going on Mrs. Chen's chart for that one. Cool. Kind and caring, taking care of each other, just like a family should. They ate up all our strawberries and melons. They promised we could eat up all their grapes and peaches when we came to visit them in Virginia. So one family grows strawberries and watermelons, and the other one grows grapes and peaches. Pretty neat. But none of us thought about Virginia much. We were so busy hugging and eating and breathing together. They get to see all their relatives. Bet you there's some funny stories going on there. Yeah. Finally, after a long time, the relatives loaded up their ice chest and headed back to Virginia at 4 a.m. We stood there in our pajamas and waved them off in the dark. We watched the relative disappear down the road, and we crawled back into our beds that felt too big and too quiet. We fell asleep. So when the relatives came, they took up space. Now it seems like they have empty space. And the relatives drove on all day and into the night. And while they traveled along, they looked at strange houses in different mountains. And they thought about their dark purple grapes waiting at home in Virginia. But they thought about us too, missing them. And they missed us. Yeah. Because it's nice when relatives come to visit and you get to see everybody. And then when they leave, you often think about them. You wonder how they're doing. And when they were finally home in Virginia, they crawled into their silent, soft beds and dreamed about next summer. Because we know next summer, what do you think they're going to do? Yeah, you're right. Come on back and visit the other family again. And there's a picture of their grapes ready to pick. I wonder if the relatives they went to visit will come and visit them at their house. Do you take turns visiting your relatives? Do they come and visit you too? It's really hard for me to visit my relatives. They live on the other side of the world. So I haven't seen them for a little while. And the last time was 2017. When was the last time you got to see your relatives? Do you see them a lot? Or do you see them just a little bit every now and again? Go ask Mum and Dad. Ask about how your relatives are doing.